buddy, Hassan here, engineer, MBA, and investor. And in today's video, I want to talk about the latest news with the CRISPR companies, the genome editing slash genomics companies. I want to talk about their latest news, latest state. Want to give some general thoughts about some of these companies. And I think it's always a good idea to always step back and see how this space, the CRISPR space, all these public companies are doing, where they are going, what to expect in the following months and year. Now, before we do that, guys, before we talk about all of that, please do like this video, smash that like button, destroy that like button, really helps this channel. You guys know how the YouTube algorithms work. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. It's quick, it's free, it's easy. And if you have subscribed and liked this video, then hit that notification bell or leave a input, feedback comment in the discussion below. So before we even talk about this, I just finished this book here, The Richest Man in Babylon, and I actually made a video like a few days ago. And I think this book is amazing. I think it's amazing for anybody that's in the investing space or just in personal finances. So many gems, hidden gems in that book. And one of the things that book really talks about is how you should never trust someone to handle your finances. You should always do your own research. You should always put some time and understand how to delegate work that really yields you the biggest rewards and actually yields you positive rewards, right? You never want to sort of jump into something just because someone told you to do so. You always want to do your research. And that's exactly what genome editing, genomics, CRISPR companies are all about, right? A lot of people are looking into space and they're just throwing money into whatever company that they're seeing most on Reddit, they're seeing most on Twitter or Instagram. That's not the way you should do it. That's definitely not the way we preach about it. We in this channel, we always talk about doing your own research, building conviction, and then pulling the trigger. Because ultimately, when times are tough, you don't want to sell the company, right? It just doesn't make sense, right? You bought a company because you believed in its future, and then you sell because it's down 5% in a single day. Come on, like you have to think long term, right? And I think this is very important. I know I keep repeating these theories and I keep repeating like this mentality, but ultimately long term, if you believe in the space, if we believe there will be a FDA approval for one of these CRISPR drugs such as CTX001 from CRISPR Therapeutics, if you believe that the wars on cancer have started, if you believe there's a future with genomics as a whole, you should be having that conviction when you pull an investment, when you push that investment for any of these companies, right? So that's just a quick food for thought here. So market cap here. First of all, CRISPR Investors. This guy is very popular on YouTube. I highly advise you guys to follow him on YouTube. This guy posts amazing videos just on genomics, genome editing companies. Highly recommend you guys to watch these videos. And he tweeted this here. He said, the different market caps of these companies, right? And this is really nice. It's nice to be visual here, and you can clearly see, the big winner is Antilia, right? Antilia was never the number one company. They just become number one back in June of this year when they released their phase one data for NTLA 2001 for the in vivo phase one human data, which was definitely positive, meaning that the results were definitely what investors were looking for. And obviously, you have CRISPR Therapeutics number two, Beam Therapeutics number three, Editas number four, and then you go on the list. You have Verve Therapeutics, Caribou Biosciences, and Graphite Biosciences. Now, obviously, these numbers are from 4th September, and we're obviously in the 12th September, so it's 8 days ago. So take those numbers with a grain of salt. Things have changed since then, especially in the genomic space. Things fluctuate very fast. But I did want to mention a few things here. First of all, don't expect this list to stay intact. I strongly expect Caribou Biosciences to not be in that position, but maybe crack top three. I strongly believe this with the way they've been progressing, with the way that the data for CBO10 is expected to come by next year to 2022. I strongly believe with all their licensing deal, all their patents that they hold, which I made a video like a few days ago on it, highly recommend you guys to watch it. I strongly believe they're sort of positioning themselves to be a platform and more than just a company focusing on their single program in their pipeline. I think they're all over the place. I think they're in agriculture. I think they're in livestock, animals, vegetation, plants. They're all over the place with the amount of patents they hold. So look out for Caribou Biosciences. Also note note on Editas, they've had a great comeback in the recent weeks, specifically the last few weeks. They've sort of, I think when I got into this space, they were going through the whole revamp of their leadership. I think they changed it too. I think they changed like CEOs three times in the last like 3 years. But this latest CEO is doing really well. They're sort of on track now, and we'll see shortly what they're tackling on. But what I think Editas has definitely potential to go further here. I'm not sure for where they will go from here. Obviously, not financial advice. You guys have to do your own research. But in this channel, we haven't really covered too much Editas. But I'll strongly recommend you guys to look into Editas at this point. And then obviously you have the typical, Beam Therapeutics, Crispr Therapeutics, and TLA. I've already covered these companies so many times in this channel that at this point I'm not even gonna make a comment on their market cap size. I still believe this we're so early in the space. I still believe we are way too early. Actually, someone asked me a question. It's a great question. Is like, what do you think about Moderna? Well, what I think about Moderna is that Moderna is worth almost $200 billion right now, right? And I'm not saying they won't be growing. Of course, they'll be growing. Moderna, everybody knows at this point what Moderna does. But what people don't realize is that they are a platform, right? They're a platform of like organism of life. That's how they were nicknamed, and they're going to license their tech to all other companies, right? Including the current pandemic, what we're seeing. So and it's all about biosecurity, right? It's not just about pandemics and being reactive, but also proactive, right? And you already know the governments are going to spend way over their budget to get a hold of some of these products if it comes to the biosecurity, right? No one wants to be locked down ever again in the future, right? Obviously, I don't have to reiterate what happened the last year and a half, almost 2 years at this point, right? So um, look out for that. But my point here is that Moderna is worth already well over 200 billion, almost 200 billion dollars. I mean, if you're looking for a safe pick, obviously Moderna is definitely one of them. These companies are extremely risky. There is no FDA approval. There's no commercial product yet. So you're betting on a significant significant path of action that have to occur in the following years for these companies to really have that growth or that justify that current valuation. But when you see Moderna, obviously they are where they are for what they've done in the past year. But just know that, if you're looking for a 40-50% growth, then maybe that company is definitely something you should consider. But again, I'm not looking for a 20%, 30% growth. And when I look at some of these companies that I've invested in, Caribou Biosciences already 100% from its IPO. So, and that's not even 2 months ago. So, again, past results don't indicate future results, not financial advice. You guys have to do your own research. So, just wanted to give my quick thoughts on the market size and just how the space looks like visually. Again, another tweet from Crispr investors here. Highly recommend you guys to watch his videos on YouTube. I really love how he uses slides and explains it. I think it's amazing for the space. So quick notes here, lots of action, third quarter 2021 and what's coming ahead of us. Some of these tweets are going into each of these companies, and I think they're really worth looking into. So you have like Editas here. Editas, like I said, they've sort of come back in course, back in action. I love what they're doing so far. Lots of people are excited for this data end of this month here, 28th September to October 2nd. Lots of people are looking for those results here for Edit 0101, which is their bread and butter program really at this point. And what's important is that they're tackling the retinal, right? The eyes, right? That's like this is something that a lot of companies that have tried to tackle this in the past, obviously non-CRISPR companies, but they've always failed or things just weren't efficient enough. And what they're trying to what they're promising at this point is that they're able to go through that threshold, right? And the only thing I would say about retinol, and again, I'm not an expert on this, I'm definitely not a doctor or whatnot, but there are some alternatives right now to sort of adjust your eyesight with surgeries and so on. I know some people got surgeries, obviously very expensive and obviously could induce risk and so on, but there is some sort of alternative. So this is a very risky space, but they're tackling on it. They're promising big on it. We'll see what their data comes in. And then they have a couple of other events, um, including one in 2 days, actually. NTLA, obviously, everybody knows at this point, NTLA 2001, in vivo, CRISPR, still first generation CRISPR, right? Just like Editas, it's still first generation CRISPR tech, meaning it's all about that tech that was first implemented by Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier back in 2012. And these companies came about: NTLA, Editas, CRISPR Therapeutics. Those companies, first gen, I call them. And obviously, we'll see what happens. Data is expected to come in the upcoming year, specifically in the months. We already had data in June. I expect by November we should get something. So we'll see. I have our eyes on NTLA. To me, they're the leading company in the market size. They used to be the dark horse of the space. I always call them dark horse. They are no longer the dark horse. If you watch my previous older videos, you'll remember I said some of those comments that NTLA was the dark horse of this space, but they can't be the dark horse anymore, right? They're the leading company, just like what we saw in market size with these CRISPR companies. CRISPR Therapeutics, what's interesting here is that end of the year, their data is for the immuno-oncology programs. This is very important. So far, they've only given us data for CTX001. Now we have those other programs they have in their pipeline to come in, and even their partnership with ViaCyte for type 1 diabetes is expected to begin end of this year. So very interesting. We'll see what happens. I have my eyes on CRISPR Therapeutics. They've sort of been trading sideways. This was one of these companies that haven't really done so much, on the wave of NTLA, Beam Therapeutics, you see Graphat Bio, Verve Therapeutics, Caribou Biosciences, all that action, all that social media presence, all those news. And it looks like CRISPR Therapeutics sort of been, laser focused with CTX001. I made a video on it. I'm still quite bullish on it. I think CTX001 gets FDA approval. I personally, not financial advice, this is just speculation. I personally believe it will happen sometime in 2022. And I know a lot of people are not so bullish about that FDA approval, but if you get FDA approval for a CRISPR drug, no matter what company you are in this CRISPR space, you are growing double digits percent in a single day. If NTLA 2001 could grow 50% in a single day for one phase one data, for just phase one data for in vivo, imagine what happened FDA approval. I think the space would just blow up. Beam Therapeutics, obviously, lots of action going on here. They're expected to file their IND by end of this year. Again, I've sort of been bearish on this because I've never really liked the fact that Beam Therapeutics, they hold so many of these patent technologies. They're licensing this tech. Obviously, have deals with Prime Medicine, the third gen company, the private company, and then you have a private partnership with Verve Therapeutics, for example, and another company too. And you're seeing that, and you're like, well, why don't you, have a program on your own, right? And they haven't filed for IND. To me, filing for IND is essential. Most all of these companies, except Beam Therapeutics, have IND filed papers. So to me, I'm really looking forward for those IND fail. I'm just focusing on Beam 101 at this point. Just get your IND papers filed, and we'll see from there. And look out for any partnerships. Moderna is really hot on this space, trying to get in this space. Very possible Beam Therapeutics or Caribou Biosciences get that deal. I think either of these companies to get that deal, it'll just blow up for either of these companies. Again, this space moves sort of in synchronous, right? If you have a great deal with Caribou Biosciences, for example, with Moderna, that Moderna is looking for to implement from one of their programs, then I strongly believe all these companies like Verve Therapeutics, Beam Therapeutics, CRISPR Therapeutics, and Tilia will all grow synchronously because it's all like in the same space, right? It's validating the CRISPR technology, right? Whether it's the first gen of CRISPR, second gen of CRISPR, or even third gen of CRISPR, you just can't help to feel bullish about the space, right? Just puts validation, right? Caribou Biosciences, obviously, I've covered so many times this company so far, so I'm not gonna spend too much time on this. But just know that data is expected to come 2022. This for CBO10. They dosed their first patient just a few weeks ago, and they have other programs to be filed, IND, and we'll see what happens. Verve Therapeutics, I've covered a video on Verve Therapeutics. I haven't really done a great job really covering them since then, but I haven't really kept my eyes on them. If you guys know a lot more than I do, leave me comments below on Verve Therapeutics. I know they're all over the space. I know they're very popular, especially tackling the cardiovascular diseases, which obviously is the leading uh, leading cause of death for all Americans and Canadians. So cardiovascular disease is very important to tackle. and what Verve Therapeutics is doing is great. But honestly, when I look at Verve Therapeutics, the first thing I think about is Beam Therapeutics partnership with them, right? The fact that Beam Therapeutics hold 50% of their profits, future profits, and so on. To me, that's just I just can't help to feel bullish about Beam Therapeutics, which is amazing for Beam, right? Graphite Bio, obviously HDR, you have that promise that they will increase efficiency, reduce off targets, basically the second generation of CRISPR, just like Kaiwu Biosciences. But in this case, Graphite Bio are working HDR. I think and it's expected the first patient for Graphite 101 trials to be enrolled, right? So this is really important, guys. This is very important. You want to keep those dates in mind because it puts things in perspective. You don't want to go and invest in a company that you don't even know if do they even have IND file papers involved. Do they even have a phase one data for patient dose? Are they even going for phase one, or what are their status? You want to invest in companies that have leadership that get the job done. And does the company have partnerships? Do they own shares of other companies that are doing something about it? Very interesting, very, very boiling space right now. Lots of things going on. You just gotta be patient, guys. This is things that take time. These are things that you have to be aware that this is not like you won't see crazy action by like Monday night. This is not something you can cover every single day and look for something new, right? These are things that take weeks and weeks to develop, but once they come in, like what we saw with NTLA 2001, you have to be ready to make adjustments, make moves, and be aware of the space growing. I think we are so early in the space. If you look at these market caps, just can't help to feel bullish about it. And again, I strongly believe all these companies will be winners. I strongly believe this. Even if it's a company that I haven't covered so much, like Graphic Bio, Verve Therapeutics, I still believe they'll be, again, it's not financial advice, but I still speculate that they could do a 2x, a 3x, a 5x, a 10x by the following years, right? Because there's so much potential in the biotech space and genomic space, especially with what happened in the pandemic the past year. Governments around the world, societies, communities around the world are looking into biosecurity, are looking to being proactive. No one wants to go into lockdown. No one wants to be that person that hasn't invested enough in their health, in their systematic processes. All these taxes from developed nations are now being poured into healthcare a lot more. I mean, I have a great anecdotal experience there, not without going too specific, but I I realize how much Canada, for example, invested in healthcare the past year with what's going on with the pandemic. All these nurses, all these health professionals, all these doctors, all these investments on hospitals, on clinics. I think you will see a lot more of that. Health is taken a lot more seriously than it did a few years ago. And to me, we're just cracking the nutshell here. We're so early. I think this we have so much potential here, but again, not financial advice. This is just speculation. A very risky space. You have to do your own research. But again, be aware of what's going on. Be part of this community. Be part of people that talk about these companies. And ultimately, you have to do your research on your own. I think there's so much here to cover. There's so many of these companies. That's the beauty of it. That's what I love. I love competition, but at the same time, I strongly believe all these companies will be winners compared to where they stand today and where we can go in the upcoming years. I think wars on cancer started, and we are so early, right? There's so many of these private companies still that haven't gone public, like Mammoth Biosciences, which we covered, which CEO of Apple, Tim Cook, is personally invested in. You also have Prime Medicine, which Beam Therapeutics owned 5 million shares of, which is Prime Medicine is the third generation CRISPR, which we haven't covered so much in this channel, but so much things going on in this space. But you have to do your due diligence, just like what the book Richest Man in Babylon says. You should never trust someone to handle your finances blindly. You should always do your own research. You should always pour time into it. Read Twitter, read Reddit, read these articles, and sort of understand what's going on in this space. And although I won't spend too much time in it is always a good idea to understand the technology and understand what differs between each of them. Obviously, that's how you understand whether it increases efficiency, off targets, reduction. You want to understand, the differences between these companies. You want to understand the promises, but ultimately, do you need to understand every single detail as an investor? That's where I differ. That's where I differ. I know a lot of scientists that watch our videos, doctors, researchers, they would disagree with me on this. But as an investor, your time is limited, right? And your pool of funds are limited. So, by the time you try to understand every single thing, maybe the opportunity has passed away, slipped away. It is what it is. So we'll leave it off this video like this. I really appreciate you guys watching this. This was a long video, 20 minutes here. We wanted to cover the space, the latest actions with some of these CRISPR companies, some overall comments on it. We'll leave it off like this. Beautiful Sunday here. Hopefully, you guys have a beautiful Sunday as well. Take some time off. I think it's a great time to relax, get some reading in. And hopefully, you guys appreciate this video. Like it if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't. And we will see each other's in the next video. Thank you for watching.